Hey everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Lessons in Leadership. My name is Grant Caffe, and I'm really excited to host a leader within the South African context and actually expanding across Africa and abroad, Darren Levy. He is the CEO of Vida Café. Darren, thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Grant. Pleasure. And hello to all your guests out there.
I think just for everyone listening or watching today, maybe just give an elevator pitch around what you are doing. We know the role, but maybe just a bit broader than that.
With pleasure. I'm the CEO of Vida Café. We're roughly 225 stores in South Africa. In your traditional areas, hopefully you're familiar with the brand on high streets, universities, airports, malls, etc. Available on delivery of late. So we're a coffee company that certainly considers ourselves to be a lot more than that. Coffee is the core of what we do and the focus, but we're very much around complementary product that goes along the coffee, but most importantly, it's about the experience that you get within the business. And every time you walk into a Vida, we have our 225 stores in South Africa and a further 22 beyond that, with lots of innovation happening and a lot of excitement around what the future holds. And despite the sort of challenging times that we've had, a lot of exciting opportunity and innovation to keep growing and leverage where we are. I think the important sort of part of the elevator pitch is that we're just obsessed about people. It starts with our own staff and looking after them, and then extending into our obsession with our customers, and that sort of flywheel of positive energy, between our staff and customers is what's at the core of our business. And we work very hard on keeping that central and hopefully unique to what you experience when you come into our stores.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And you spoke now around the innovation side of things. And I think that's something that I really want to jump straight into, because in terms of the purpose of this episode of the series is really looking at the practical elements around leadership, around someone's role so that they can ignite or be the catalyst within an environment so people can empower themselves. And innovation, they say, happens when our back's against the wall, when there is no other alternative but to innovate, but to create so that you can survive. But it seems that since you joined just over 7 years ago and joined the Vida team as the CEO, you've really instilled a consistency in innovation where it's not necessarily where you always have to have your back against the wall. How is it that you've been able to instill that culture of consistent innovation, whether it be new products, different store experiences, customer experiences, and team experiences?
I guess I've felt like my back's been against the wall from the moment I've walked in, which is, I guess, at the core of how and when the innovation started. 7 years ago, 14 years into the life of Vida, we're now 21 years old this year. Businesses go through cycles, and 7 years ago we were not at our strongest, which was when I joined. And besides fixing some broken things, it's innate in my nature that I'm paranoid about innovation and paranoid about staying ahead of competition. But most importantly, I believe that when you innovate, you don't just develop products and experiences for commercial reasons, but I wholeheartedly believe that sort of attention to product, to excellence, but also to change, sends an almost subconscious message to customers that you love your business, that you're paying attention, and you're certainly not resting on your laurels. So I remember the first thing I had to do, which was more fix than innovation, was obviously fix the coffee. It certainly wasn't at a point where even I was drinking at Vida. How could I expect you and me to go and have a meeting at Vida, which I wanted you to do, if you were not a coffee drinker? I'd love for you to be a coffee drinker, but let's be honest, not everybody is. So we introduced tea, and then the innovations started, and I can't even list how many there've been, but maybe in terms of one or two that I made focus on was putting coffee and our food onto the delivery platforms, which fortunately started after a 3-month pilot, but kicked off 6 months ahead of COVID, which was fortuitous as people couldn't visit our stores. We put coffee into Lift Airlines. We developed that solution during lockdown. We've innovated extensively in the coffee space. We've actually introduced a second blend, which typically is a more artisanal option. And then extensive innovation in the sustainability space, which is important. Our cups and first to market compostable lids, a whole host of product in the health and wellness space. We're offering free oat milk. So Yeah, the answer is innovation is critical. It's been at the core of what we've, it's very much in our DNA, which I speak about, and I think has been, without doubt, one of the main reasons for the success that we've experienced over this period. Once you understand your business, that you, I think it was even Howard Schultz who said that we're a high volume, high margin business, is that you needed to understand the concept of scale. And if we rely only on the coffee drinkers, and it's not possible to have all of them, we would be okay. But the importance of having food and having options that people could still consume enables us to grow and scale the business, which is essential. When you're selling 30, 35 rand things, you need to have options.
Like they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
100%.
So Darren, then in terms of the practicalities that come with innovating, if I'm in an organization right now, say it's 10 to 100 people in the wider department or the team, how can I implement a mechanism or a culture of innovation, of people thinking about new ideas and actually doing something about it? What is it that you've done within Vida that has ultimately allowed, on a practical stance, people to feel like they can innovate, like they can come up with new ideas and they can test and experiment? Is it weekly meetings? Do you have a innovation station or some sort of activity that you create? Like how is it actually created right now in Vida?
Granted, it starts with also an obsession around the customer and being close to our customer base and understanding what they want. It includes a lot of analytics in our business and understanding what's working and what's not working and analyzing and extracting trends from that. Besides the analytics department or area within our business, the innovation really sits mostly in our new products team and our marketing and brand team. And I like to say that those two departments sit at the sharp end of the business. The way our business is structured is that I look after on a very hands-on basis, with the two execs reporting into me. And at the beginning of the year, we set our plans. They always change. There's always a lot of dynamic and robust debate around products that are either introduced to us from suppliers or customers or things we pick up during the year. But essentially, we set out a calendar for 12 months, and in some cases, in most cases, further 18 months when you think about the seasonal launches. We introduce interim launches, and we've got to keep the pipeline filled. That being said, it's a careful balance between not doing too much because it creates quite a lot of stress on the business. But essentially, we have a very collaborative environment. If you could see through this door, it's completely open plan. Our sort of senior team, leadership team sit together weekly. Our executive team also sit together weekly, and it's really a culture of collaboration and a freeness and an openness to suggest and to debate product and innovation to ensure that ongoing evolution of keeping up with our customer demands and also trends. And I just want to highlight how important that element of research and being not just in a position to keep track of what our local businesses are doing, but globally to keep track of that and ensure that the innovation continues. So it's part of our underlying values that there is a value of innovation and an expectation that we will continuously innovate, and we want people to contribute to that innovation as we go forward. And then once it's something that we want to pursue, obviously it goes through a very rigorous pipeline and methodology of testing and trialing before it goes into store on a national basis.
What I'm picking up here is on the one side, you've got the physical environment that you are focusing on, making sure, like you've said, with the open plan offices, so that there is access or the ability to access whoever in whatever department. And then on the other side, you've got this experimental approach to things. So for me, with an experiment, one has to have a clear hypothesis around what you think is going to happen. But then you have a proper experiment in place where you can analyze that data, where you can measure the consequences and outputs that happen from it. And it seems that you've really adopted that experimentation mindset where you're not just relying necessarily on your gut. You're really taking into account decision useful data and insights, and then putting it into the experiment of whether you've seen it overseas, and let me call it South Africanizing it, so that you can see exactly how that looks within the context and maybe in a particular region even. If you were to look then about how the team interprets that data and processes that data, then Is there data analytics team, or is this built inherently into most of your departments?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and it has also been a journey and an evolution for us from a time when you were relying solely on your point of sale information, which was disparate to your HR and payroll files as well as your financials. We implemented a globally recognized data warehouse and reporting tool called ClickSense. We employed a commercial analyst into our business who was first and foremost just, I guess, automating and making sure the reports were accurate and we could run the business and pull whatever reports and views and ratios, etc., that we needed. And it's now evolved to a point on the back of what you spoke about, where it's been absolutely essential to make sure that, I don't even want to put a percentage of it, but certainly the majority of the decisions we made are based on data. The beautiful thing I always say about retail is that it is scientific, it is data, it is analytics based, and you can run the business on numbers, but there is still that element of feel and gut. You can still go into a store and move this to here or add 5 facings instead of 4 and see if it makes a difference, and obviously test it with data. But that department is now grown to we're about to employ our 3rd person from 1, because it's become so pervasive and the business has become so dependent on our commercial analytics team that our entire strategy is underpinned with a commercial analytics pack to track our strategy to numbers and down to every single project, whether it's a product launch or a promotion that we run, or how we fashion a promotion from a commercial financial basis. The sorts of discounts that we give are now all run through the analytics team, who give us the various scenarios. But that being said, we're running a promotion now where we are giving away free oat milk on the back of purely our Vida Imundo, or Life in the World sustainability initiative. The upside of drinking a plant-based milk on the environment and all of those benefits is far superior than dairy, notwithstanding whether you are dairy intolerant or not. And without doubt, in a typical store, you'll pay for an alternative, a milk, so you lose money by not charging. But here's a decision that is not based on commercial outcomes, but purely for other reasons, which we are very, very seriously committed to. So the answer is yes, absolutely ingrained. Team is growing, can't keep up with the demand from the rest of the business as to what's working and not working. And along with, a host of very important lessons and things that we've done over the last few years, and certainly the last 2 years of COVID, is definitely up there in the top 5 improvements in the business, was this analytics part of our business.
That's super inspiring around something like a non-dairy product, the leadership team and the entire team making a collective decision to do that. And they say that a value in a business is only a value when you're willing to sacrifice something for it. It's not something that is easygoing. It's really something that you have to stand by, and normally it costs you something. And in this particular example now, it costs you, say, the rands and cents, but more than that, how is it that the team, in these situations where I now need to practice the values, I need to make sure that we stand by the values that we have as a team agreed upon and hold each other accountable to, how does that look when there is this commercial decision that is literally not going to, in a rational way, make sense in the short term? How do you, as a team, come together and stand by that value? Does the management team just get together and say, hey guys, Darren's just made this decision and we all have to do it? Or is there a more collaborative and then a more pervasive consequence to how that happens?
Yeah, it's also a fascinating question, and something that I grapple with. When I joined the business and it was really head down and full on turnaround mode, everything stopped at my desk. In fact, there weren't many people left at head office to even manage. So I guess I had the right to be authoritarian, because there wasn't anybody to argue with me. But as we've gone through various phases and the business has established itself and got itself to a totally different position, we've got a fully functioning executive team, which, when we put together, someone advised me and said, you've come from a place where you've been very dominant in the business. We've also had a board of directors. I've got 2 very, very valuable executive directors alongside me. So maybe it wasn't just me, but certainly the executive director team was very strong. And the advice given was, if you're going to establish an exco, make sure that they are fully empowered. So we've made a conscious effort to ensure that that is the main decision-making team. But I don't want to make mistakes. So I'm only too happy to go through another round of reviews, focus groups, testing, trialing. You spoke about the privilege we've got of having so many stores. We can launch a product if it's easy enough in a few stores to make sure it works. In reality, the numbers do back up most of the decisions. I don't have to make unilateral decisions. I get upset whenever I say something and it's assumed to be a decision because it's more a prompt and a challenge to everybody. Yeah, it's inherent in the structure of the team and how we run the business and want the business to be run, which supports those underlying values, which are so critical. Again, and that's another whole discussion around values and essence and brand and culture, which is on purpose, which are all very topical at the moment, and some which are maybe a little bit too topical for my liking. But if you had to ask me, out of all those important things, values is probably number one, because if your values are set, for me, it defines culture, number one, and two, you can always check back to a value to ensure that you're making the right decisions in a business, in anything that you do, behavioral or not.
It's far easier once you have set values in a business or in a team, once you've all agreed. And I think I'm a big proponent here in support of the direction that Simon Sinek takes around values needing to be verbs, that it must be a behavior. It can't be a noun. Like integrity uses that example where he says, you can't go to someone in the beginning of the day and just say, hey, give me some more integrity today. It's not something that is super tangible for someone to know what to do, versus if we actually make sure that it's a behavior and a verb, then it's far easier. From your team now, in terms of the values, and ultimately it's an expression of who everyone is collectively, how is it that the management team or the senior team, how is it that they are able then to do what they need to do to bring out the best in their teams? Practically, how does that look around making sure that the management team are super engaged, but in a position where they can empower themselves so that they can serve their team?
Granted, there's a lot that is built into the culture of the business, and we're a very energetic, passionate, open, fun culture. The open plan is another good example as to how it works. And literally going back to those weekly structures that we have, which give clear direction into where the business is going. Those executives in turn take it down into their teams. Not all the departments sit on our exco right now. So those that don't fall into another group or another team in our business, where updates and direction is set, where the strategy is clearly defined, where it's expected that that strategy is taken by those departmental heads to their respective teams, and then their respective strategies are built on a monthly basis. Besides just tracking performance and tracking deadlines and tracking launches, we all know what's going on. There's a lot of communication using traditional channels, not least of all some of the chat channels, or those, although we don't rely on those to get things done. It's more to celebrate wins, to comment on launches or successes. And if there's anything serious happening, we deal with that with a phone call. And then quarterly to review our strategy with the greater team and see where we're going. I really count myself privileged that although the business was perhaps struggling a little bit back when I joined some time ago, the brand is so strong, and there's this not just DNA of innovation, but DNA of passion and success and drive, of delivery, of excellence, although it's always, again, a journey and there's always things to improve and things that don't always work. But overlaid with that, you have to have those formal structures, you have to have documents, you have to have numbers, you have to keep tracking back that things are obviously working. And ultimately, if the culture's in place, if people are happy, if customers are satisfied, and if the numbers are certainly coming through, then we know that the projects are being delivered on. I can honestly not remember more than one or two examples where we've made a significant mistake or even missed a deadline. I'm just so grateful for the team that we've assembled. And as the success builds, the momentum, people learn, they flourish, we promote internally, and expertise from external also seems to grow. And when the team does change, which is inevitable, the quality of resource that we are fortunate enough to bring into our team just gets better and better and better. Our team is just phenomenal, and I'm grateful and dependent on them for where we've come over the last few years.
Passion's something that definitely is an experience that I've had at Vida, and that's in the customer facing role. The entire team at an outlet at the cafe where we're really used their obrigado and shouting and having a good time and really making it a very pleasant experience to be in. That is the team that faces a customer every single day and is the representation of what the customer sees on a daily, weekly basis when they visit. How is it that you create consistency at that operational level where it seems that across every different outlet, people have the same, not necessarily the exact same style, because of course everyone is unique and they provide their own flair to that, which is incredible, but they definitely have this foundational understanding of what needs to be done and why it's important that they focus on creating passion and creating good experiences or positive experiences for people. How is that done? I mean, because let me put it this way. Your head of operations can create a nice little policy document and say, okay, everyone, you have to celebrate when someone gives you a tip, or you have to do this. And there's a standard operating procedure for that, and go ahead and now do that. But we know that people don't respond to an instruction in that sort of manner. They very much respond to why we're doing the things that we're doing and then seeing examples of it. So maybe just give practically there around how you've managed to create consistency within that operational team such that they genuinely do believe and they buy in to why it matters.
Even though we've been around for 20 years, it's been at the essence of the business. And it's the one thing you can truly say you do differently. I mean, I'd like to think we do a great coffee, but ultimately it's a personal feeling as to whether you like this brand or that brand. It starts really with recruitment, and we do our very best to try and ascertain whether a person has the personality to be in the team and represent that passion, or what we call our Vida vibe. And then you talk about consistency, which is not just around the passion, but it's over 200 plus stores to make sure you're making that perfect cup of coffee every day, but also served, as we say, with a perfect, consistent shot of happiness alongside the coffee. So the training team and training infrastructure is critical. And our training team is mostly, and in fact, if I have to think through it, is predominantly our strongest, what we call passionistas. So whilst they are experts in training in health and safety, in production of food, in basic hygiene, in barista, and the various steps within those as you progress through the store, the core element of that training team is their own passion and their ability to walk in the team and probably be our strongest passion team in terms of the experience. And that team obviously occupies our central training and is often in the field doing updates and in-store training. But I still believe, and again, when I talk about what I sometimes think back, is like, how do you actually train this? And yes, you can train the greetings and you can train the experience, but what we train explicitly and not is not just to do it, but when you love your customers, when you genuinely and authentically are friendly with your customers, there's this sort of reciprocal energy that delivers some element of benefit besides just that the importance of the caffeine. And I believe that it's that energy that we train and make core and unique and central to our business that starts to create this, what I mentioned earlier, this flywheel, this energy, this momentum, which feeds off itself. And it's certainly not just about a good experience leads to a happy customer, leads to more purchases, and maybe at the end of the day, financial benefit, not just to the company, but most importantly to the staff. But it's that benefit which is non-commercial. And when people are loved, when the staff love the customers and customers in turn love the staff, that recognition, that motivation, that which makes our business so unique, leads to experiences and value far beyond the bottom line. When you are recognized as a critical customer, when you do interact and love your barista and you know who that barista is, and that friendliness of knowing who you are and what you like, and because of your regularity and frequency in our business, is actually what drives it. So it kind of has its own momentum. And obviously we do have training and we do have audit and you do measure the passion. And if somebody is not living up, then we have to address why it is and what's going on. And maybe it's something, not just a training fault or someone who's not doing something correctly, as we say, which is not quite fair. There's certainly a lot of emotional energy that goes into keeping this consistency, looking after it, investing in it, but packaging it, documenting it, looking after the passionistas in the business, and never losing it at the end of the day, because that's one thing that I believe no one can come close to. And I say this genuinely, in many, this is not about customer service or experience. This is something else on another level altogether, which is quite hard to define, that we own and we're very proud of.
Darren, I think that's beautifully said, because this hasn't taken a couple of years. This hasn't been an overnight cultural success, right? This has been 21 years in the making. You joined 7 years ago when it was 14 years old, and there was already this expression and this culture that had already started, but again, it's just reinforcing it and consistently applying it. And unfortunately, we see on the front covers of the magazines a lot of these overnight successes, where in actual fact it took many years, and most of the time it took more than a decade for them to achieve the success that they achieved, just like you have done, especially from a cultural point. And the last question, because I know we're running out of time now, so the last question that I wanted to ask you, everyone listening or watching this episode, it doesn't matter if they have 2 team members that they're currently leading, or if they have 2,000 team members. What is 1 or 2 things that you think that they need to start either being aware of or prioritizing that will be a positive and constructive influence on themselves and their teams going forward?
There's never enough focus or time or investment in your customer, in understanding their purchasing decisions, and not consumption decisions, but purchasing decisions. A lot has been written about what goes into deciding on where you will consume and what a brand actually stands for. So it's really at 2 levels. It's understanding what makes people behave or change behavior, understanding from your customer point of view what it is that they really want. When I started in this business, the first thing I did is I went to go and see one of the founders, and he said to me, "You simply just have to listen to what the consumer is saying about your coffee." And on the back of that, we shut down our roastery, made alternative plans, and tweaked our blends and upgraded every part of the coffee production to make it what it is today. So that's the one side. 2 is the focus on data. I think that is absolutely essential, which we've certainly touched on. And somewhat linked to number 1 is that what your brand really stands for. The value of a business, if it's something that you want to own and live with for the rest of your life, or build and sell or acquire or grow, the value of the business is ultimately made of 2 parts, in my opinion. The one is financially. There's a value based on the profits and the cash flow and all the other fancy valuation methodology, but it's also based on a brand value. And whilst it may be difficult to agree on a valuation method for that, the one can't exist without the other, in my opinion. And no one wants to be involved in a business which doesn't stand for something important, and vice versa. Ultimately, there is a profit and a commercial aspect to the business, because that is how we ultimately reward our people and how businesses are measured. So the 2 very much go hand in hand. So again, looping back to our eMundo initiative and what we stand for, and pushing forward with oat milk and recycled paper-based lids, for which we've had not a lot, but some criticism, because it's not plastic and it fiddles with the taste of the coffee. But we've saved millions and millions of lids going into landfills. And I'd like to think customers see that as being important, and it doesn't really affect the taste too much. Perhaps those are some of the important things to consider, but we could talk for hours about these things, because it's certainly not 1 or 2 or 3 things, that's for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's not, first of all, linear. It's not just one after the other, A, B, C, D, and then that's it, right? Well, thank you. Yeah, really, really thank you so much. And everyone, thank you very much for joining the 3rd episode of Lessons in Leadership. I really hope that you enjoyed the discussion between Darren and I, and just how he approaches business, how he prioritizes the team, and the team therefore to serve the customer. Stay tuned for episode 4. Looking forward to it. And if you have any questions or any other comments, make sure that you go on the bottom of this, whether it's on YouTube, or just pop us a mail, and visit grantcref.com if you'd like to listen to more episodes as well. Cheers.